Hey everyone, welcome to the American Sidebar podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fitzgerald. The date is October 6th, 2023. Along with me is my co-host,
Brian Mason.
On today's show, we have former Navy SEAL Bill Brown. Brian, could you tell us a little bit about Bill?
Joe, our following guest served 8 years in U.S. Navy SEAL teams. After multiple deployments in multiple countries, he found a new mission: to help his fellow veterans and honor his friends who sacrificed their lives in Operation Extortion 17. What started as 60 Navy SEALs swimming in the Hudson River, doing push-ups and pull-ups and swimming to another platform to repeat this multiple times, has grown to hundreds of current and former SEALs, vets from every branch of the military, as well as regular civilians and first responders, as a yearly event to raise awareness and much-needed funds for veterans programs. There are currently 50,000 veterans groups in the U.S. and hundreds of thousands of veterans who need help. Just like some vets like Bill stand out, so do 3 of these veterans groups.
Some of his veteran groups are the Navy SEAL Foundation. You can find them at thenavysealfoundation.org. Also, the Brian Bill Foundation, which is, you can follow them at thebrianbillfoundation.org. And also Uncommon Grit Foundation, which is the uncommongritfoundation.org. You can also find Bill on Instagram. His handle is freedomspirit77. Once again, it's on Instagram. And you can also find him on Facebook under just Bill Brown. Stand by for the show.
We're bringing the noise. Go, baby, we bringing our toys. Separate men from the boys. Chopper be singing, should be on the voice. Bang, bang, we gon' ride out. Gang, gang, we don't die out. Want it like this.
Very good to have you in here, Bill.
Honored to be here, guys. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. This is real grassroots, and this is what our country needs.
Awesome. Love it. So, just kind of getting started, I think people just kind of get acclimated to kind of who you are, right? So, former Navy SEAL. Tell us what it takes to be a Navy SEAL. You know, I assume, right, that you go, you sign up for the Navy, right, and then you get selected based upon what you do, or do you put in for it? How does that work exactly?
Tell us how easy it is.
It's just you hit a button and automatically get your training.
I have friends that said, they were going to be a Navy SEAL, but they just didn't, they didn't wake up that day, so they just didn't do it. So,
I think it's like a lot of other things in life. It's one of those type of callings where it brings you. There's a gravity that it brings you to it. For me, it wasn't the outfit that it is now. It was. It wasn't like internationally known. It was kind of a. When I went in Navy, I didn't know anything about the team.
what year was that?
1997, I went in. I thought, so what happened for me was I just wanted to become an electrician, learn a trade. But once I was in boot camp and I kind of learned a little bit more about it, I figured that was, living a life of adventure, serving your country with really beautiful men. And to be the tip of the spear, that was something I was drawn to. I wanted to be the tip of the spear. I wanted to go in and get after something. And I think what it does is a lot of guys, they get a hunger for it, but you got to have a real, it's got to be blood in your mouth type of hunger, because they're going to test you. And a lot of people think, oh, they're going to test you, but they don't realize there's a reason why it has such a high attrition rate. They're coming at you like pedal to the metal. They're going to press. And I don't know how it is now. There's been a lot of drama towards the training, but it's a vice. And they know what they're looking for. There's certain attributes that they're looking for, a certain combination of attributes that they're looking for. I think it's a real combination between the number one attribute, I think, would be real grit. And I mean, the type of grit, it's like Thursday night of Hell Week, and everybody around you pretty much quit, and you're still in that cold water.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the things that drove me is kind of just like you came from Joe, from a military family. My dad was a veteran. My grandfather was a veteran, and my pappy was a World War II veteran. And one of the things they do is they have your last name on your helmet, and when guys decide that they've had enough, they got to ring a bell and they put their name on the helmet.
Yeah.
And so I think that I had a lot of respect. My grandfather was worked 3 jobs his whole life, had 9 kids, and my dad busted his ass, first person in my college to use a GI Bill and go to college. And so I had a lot of respect. I had my grandfather's name and my father's name. So I think in the end, I told myself, no matter what happened, like when I kind of got involved in it, like I was going to die before I quit. And I literally got a tattoo that says, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger, over my heart the day before first phase. So I'm up there in the pool deck, and of course it's a pool evolution, and they see my scabby tattoo. And they got, it's like wolves. And
You got killed for it.
then literally I had an instructor, and he says, I'm going to make you quit. And you're going to have to look in the mirror every day for the rest of your life and know you're a quitter. And then he does that, and he starts tearing off some of the scabs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told him, this is not the way you want to go through. I told him, you could cut off my balls and I ain't going to quit. And so they fucking came at me real fucking hard.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the outfit it was now. It wasn't like you could go online and do research.
And this was
Everything-
pre 9/11 that you went in.
Yeah.
Had your instructors been in combat before? Like, was
It's-
it a different call?
Uh,
What, do you still have Vietnam guys there?
Yeah, there were a few. It's difficult, but we had a couple guys that did different things in Somalia. You had different guys that did things in Bosnia. You had different guys that did some things in Panama. There was an operation, I forget, it was in South America where you guys did some things. I think it was involving with the bridge, some prison rescue stuff. El Salvador, guys who
Well,
did
like
some-
Kosovo.
Oh, plenty guys doing stuff
Yeah.
in Kosovo.
Oh, Bosnia too, right? They were
Yeah.
in Bosnia?
Yeah, so I mean, you had some guys who put in some work,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like the what it is now, or like what the guys who were just going through the, after the guys from the Vietnam guys, who basically, the mentality of the guys from Vietnam, like Dick Marcinko and things like that, the blueprint, the template they set up is a beautiful template. And when you look at a lot of successful type of spec ops missions, it's the same type of format. And it's one of the things you guys were joking about before about that comedian saying, hey, you're using NVGs, you're hitting from, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And and they came at me, but they saved my life. Because I came up very rough and tumble. Navy absolutely saved my life, and I came up so rugged that my perspective on being astute, being able to articulate yourself in a manner, and just respect and basic type of understanding of intelligence. I was very aggressive, right? But I was also, I didn't sell myself right to those guys, and they thought I was a straight rock. Like, they knew I was, like, they saw me in Hell Week and things like that. They knew I was, where that counted, they knew I had it. But they thought I was a rock. And I thought that was one of the hardest lessons I could ever learn, because I thought all you got to be is a door kicker, you know what I mean? But being a team guy is a little bit more than that.
You have to think.
So they came at me. They were brutal to me, bro. But in a way, they built something in me that I think is my strongest attribute, and that's when I got the ability to tackle something and stay on. Yeah.
Did you ever have the opportunity to work with any of those guys afterwards? Like, where you could say, hey, you made the right decision by letting,
Yep.
that I got through and I proved you wrong?
Well, it's not as far as 100% worked with a lot of those guys. It's not about that I proved them wrong. The truth is, they know the attributes that they're looking for, right? 100% they know it. They lived it. They lived it for their life, it's a combat unit. It's an elite combat unit. Like, a lot of people say, "Oh, SEALs are all nice guys." No, SEALs are not all nice guys. When we think about what SEALs have to do, SEALs are American warriors, and that's what counts. And so that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a guy that's what the attributes they're looking for. So when they did their assessment in me, they're they're evaluating me, and they're like, "Wow, man, this guy's, this guy's, the assessment they had on me is they thought, hey, when it comes to, just a basic type of 101, does he have, is he quick enough on his feet?" They gave me a thumbs down. But the truth was, I'm pretty sharp on my feet.
Yeah, you proved it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, as far as the training, how long is training?
So the way it would typically go through is there's a phase, and I might get the acronym slightly wrong.
All I know is BUDS. That's all I know.
Roger that. BUDS, acronym, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. There's a phase when you first class up. I believe it's called PRT, Physical Readiness Training. And so what happens in that phase is basically you're waiting because they only have so many classes a year. And so guys are coming in either from their A school or from the fleet, and they're waiting to get a certain number of guys to class up. And it's approximately about 200 per class that starts up.
Yeah.
And so there's a month or maybe a month and a half or maybe 2 months. If you get there early and you basically, you're working out, you're running on the beach, you're swimming a lot.
This is pre-BUDS.
Pre-BUDS. And it's a really kind of good indoctrination because you got SEALs that are instructors there, and the goal of that period isn't to break you. Don't worry, you'll get there. That goal is basically to get guys kind of physically geared up. Because one of the things that happens is it's almost like when you're in first phase, it's like running a marathon almost every day. And so there's a lot of games to it, like so one is you're getting in type of the physical shape of almost like a professional athlete for that, to gear up for this training where they're gonna seriously press you. And at the same time, you're coming familiar with your environment. You're kind of learning the ropes a little bit. And so I highly recommend if guys are gearing up and are trying to quarterback it, how they're going to go into it. I would recommend try to get to PRT if they still have it sooner, and to maximize basically the time you have to acclimate. So once you do that, your class starts up. It's called first phase, and that's the beat down phase, and that's where it's what they're really what they're looking for. They're looking for a couple things. If I do my assessment back, one is they're looking how you work as a teamwork in boat crews, right? And then two, they're mental endurance, and they're looking straight up. You got to have a certain aggressive personality, an aggressive trait you got to bring to the table. And then they're gonna, they're testing you. They're testing you. One of the things that happens too is, one is they're testing you, but two is the physical exertion every day of these long beach runs, these long swims, O course, log PTs, and straight up beat downs, is that you're very prone to getting your body broken, right? Because it's severe physical exertion. So then it comes at a time like you got to kind of learn how to play the game. So one of the sayings, there's different sayings, right? One of them is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And the truth is, a real commando in real warfare, the only thing that matters is winning.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right? And they have another saying that says it pays to be a winner. So a lot of the stuff in first phase and throughout the training is basically you're competing against other very aggressive and very in-shape men.
You're doing whatever you can to win.
That's right. In these races, and it pays to be a winner. So if you win with your boat crew, you get a little break. If not,
that's when you get to rest a little bit.
That's it.
In some way, that's the only time you get to recover, I assume.
That's right. Well, there's other things you do too, but like, during a lot of the early morning, and you want to talk about like these early morning PTs at like 4 in the morning, and you're just getting, you're turning up the intensity level to an area that few people will ever experience. And those early morning PTs on the grinder, when you're getting after it, that's a game too. Because to tell you the truth, the guys who hoo-yahing their ass off and trying to do everything in the proper form all the time, I don't think they're doing it right. So for me, like if you're the instructor nearby me, I'm playing it perfect form, hoo-yahing as loud as I can. But if you're over there, I'm taking a break.
Are there other guys watching to see?
They're cutting different angles too, and catching it, and they know the game too, right? It's almost like like the Spartans, like they had to go out and steal food sometimes and things like. And I guess the Ranger course is kind of similar because they're like they're food deprived in some of their training, so guys going through that course get really sneaky about like stowing away food and hiding it so they can level up their protein. And I think so you kind of learn like, and that's part about being a commando, and you learn that in the get-go that this is about survival and winning.
David Goggins he talks about the one part where he's breaking souls, where he's talking about the boats and his boat crew, and he's they're motivated and they're going above and beyond. They keep lifting up the boat, and everybody around them, they broke their souls because of it.
So I was in his boat crew, and he's David Goggins. So imagine this, right? We know what a physical specimen.
Yeah,
is he curious about that? So is he the same person that you see now?
No, of course we all change, right?
Yeah.
So at the time,
he was heavy set at one point. Right?
He wasn't heavy set.
No, he was heavy set
earlier.
As he was a exterminator.
I used to be an exterminator. Don't badmouth the exterminator.
I started following him even before, way before he got famous. And the famous video where he's kind of running along the side, the car, and the car is sitting there filming him, and he's just flipping out. But I got intrigued just because of the whole Arizona death run that he did.
Yeah.
That's when I got that's when I got really interested. But sorry, the whole boats thing was interesting. I heard the whole story behind it, but it'd be cool. So
he was built like a linebacker then, and in that type of environment, you got a guy like David Goggins in your boat crew. And by the way, Chris Kyle is in my boat crew too, right?
Wow.
So we had a stacked boat crew, right? So when you have guys at that caliber in your boat crew,
that's like Florida State having like Tony Dorsett.
Wasn't Chris Kyle a little bit older going through buds too?
Yeah,
was it?
Yeah. So when you have that type of caliber of individuals, right? Imagine we never lost a race in Hell Week, right?
Yeah.
We were extremely aggressive, and it's a huge benefit. The other thing about it too is, it's just like here in this room, we kind of motivate each other, and at that point in time, Chris Kyle was low key. He was actually a tactician, and if you think about his personality as a sniper and why he was such a successful sniper, it plays out in how he was at Buds. So at Buds, we would call it being the gray man. Basically, that's the guy who's never last, always hitting his performance marks, no issues, but he's not like in your face.
He wasn't standing out. He wasn't getting attention.
Yeah, he wasn't seeking it out. He was performing. So in the boat crew, to be honest, he was definitely he was like an engine, like a big engine in the boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that crew, but he wasn't a leader. The truth was Goggins was the leader, and I was kind of a leader too. So Goggins brought an intensity level that the type of you're going straight after your target, and that's it.
Yeah.
And when he talks about that scenario, and there's a couple, I remember that scenario, right? And so basically, one of the things they would do is they'd have you running around with these boats forever, like these boat races, up and down these sand berms, and guys are fucking spent.
The exhaustion level has to be.
He says at some point, I guess you guys start military pressing the boats.
Yeah,
just to mess with the instructors.
Yeah. Well, what they have is they have you holding it straight up, your arm straight up.
Yeah.
And so over time, what happens?
Yeah, you
like
start
this,
shaking.
right? And so we're doing like that, and he's like, and I could feel it. You know what I mean? He's like, fuck that, let's throw it up.
Yeah.
Because the instructors are seeing us, we're all like this, and then we're like, fuck it. And then we just start banging and screaming while we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So at a time when everybody's kind of fucking sucking hard. And like, it is sucking.
There's these psychos going, no, we're going to go a little harder.
Well, what it did is it changed everything. It's like, fuck you. We're fucking crushing this. And you could see the instructors, because these guys are all SEALs. They all been through it. They knew exactly where we were, and they loved it. And so that's the type of that's the type of beauty, that having that type of mentality. So that's the type of mentality that's like a force multiplier, because it can change things in a second. Like you look at football, like they call it playmakers, right? That's having that type of mentality, having those type of guys around. That's what makes,
Imagine those other Navy SEALs now, right? Where they see like, Chris Kyle and Goggins and what you guys all did, right?
When you saw
when they look back, they're probably shocked, right?
Like guys tapping out, ringing the bell, right? In your boat crew, how with that leadership mentality.
Well, our boat crew was stacked, so.
And did you guys lose anybody?
We never lost a race, and we never lost anyone. That boat crew is a stacked boat crew, a legendary boat crew. But the thing is, I think even like these days, the thing is, at the time, you don't realize how beautiful the guys are you serve with. And I serve with so many beautiful men, right? And at the time, you don't realize it because you're just in it, right? And then it's like you kick back and you think about some of the things you went through and some of the things you guys did together. And if there's like, there's one of the, I talked about one of the things they're looking for, and it's the ability to work as a team. And when you got a bunch of very aggressive guys, and you have to be aggressive, and it's pay to be a winner, man. It's like second place, fuck you. You know what I mean? Don't mean shit.
Yeah.
It's winning is everything.
But getting those guys to work together has got to be a different dynamic.
Well, because there's very big egos. Guys are strong-willed, and to get through that thing, you got to be strong. There's got to be the one thing about having the ability to say, hey, I can check out at any time. And everybody's going through this, like it's not stopping. It's like one thing to be cold in the water. I mean cold, bro. Yeah. And you're shaking your ass off like this, and the only way you can get out is if you quit. Like that's it. And you're here all fucking night. Like the thing about buds, at least when I went through, the shit turned on at night. There ain't nobody there. It's just you and the instructors all night. Like you're gonna find out.
And they do things like these guys all went through it. So at least if you look at them, you go, all right, they did go through it, but it's got to seem like it's never going to end. Does it seem like, and that cold, how do you get used? I mean, you can't get used to the cold.
Nah.
You can't get, I mean, I don't see how you could even, you go into the water.
Especially with,
come out,
I'm speaking from a Marine standpoint, but.
You a Marine?
Yeah.
Oh.
I love Marines, except in a couple fist fights.
They are big dudes.
We were in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri,
and
we had it was truck driving school, so we had the Navy Seabees were there. We had the Army truck drivers, the Marine Corps truck drivers. So all of us were all there together. It was super funny. So we would actually go out for formation. You know how like. You've seen it front and center, right? So like the Marines are really like straight to the point, they'll salute. Everything's done quickly and efficient, right? And our formations are the same, right? So we go through all our things, get done, get up, right, and get out. So we get into our barracks, and we're standing upstairs, and still the CVs and everybody else is still out there. One time we get out and we're close towards graduation, and we go running upstairs, and we grab out our paint guns and start shooting the Navy Seabees, and they're in their dress whites.
I didn't like that.
Oh, that must have went over good.
Oh, they came running up the stairs, and we're playing King of the Hill, kicking them down the stairs. It was crazy.
When you're talking about the water part, right?
Yeah.
I remember I used to scuba dive all the time down in the Rockaways. So one day it's like October, and we're scuba diving, right? And I come out of the water, and the water drains out of your wetsuit, and the wind hits me. And I was with a friend of mine, and we were in our cars with the heat on, and then we had to go eat soup afterwards. You're talking about being in what is it, the Pacific Ocean?
Could you
right?
imagine that level of suck though?
That's what I'm saying. I was able to go in my car with my heat on.
So, for instance, right, my wife and I actually had this conversation before I came. We were talking about like me wearing like flip flops, right? And she doesn't like me wearing flip flops because my toes are all messed up because I'm wearing boots in the water and everything. Right? So like they look nasty, right? So it's
So
funny.
you just painted your toenails.
No. So I try to I try to put lipstick on a pig, right? Try to make them look as good as they're possibly going to be, But the level of suck that he's talking about, like you're in freezing cold, you got wet boots.
How
wet
cold
socks.
is that water? You think? Did you ever even find that? Like, did you ever even try to find out?
Cold enough that I couldn't find my balls.
So bad. Yeah, rifles with sand and wet. I mean, it's nonstop suck, right?
It kind of preps you because I remember after I got through BUDS, I went through something called SQT, SEAL Qualification Training. It's more of a gentleman's course. And I'm doing a dive with the Dreadnought R5 in San Diego. We got a dive buddy, And we had one of those big cargo ships come over us, right? And we got to dive at a very shallow depth because the Dreadnought R5 recycles, it's 100% O2, recycles CO2, and you basically recycle the O2. And that way it gives you longer dive durations. But believe it or not, pure O2 is basically toxic to your system at a certain depth, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened was we got no choice. We got to suck mud, right? Got this big-ass ship coming right
And the
at us.
sound underwater is 10 times worse.
Crazy. And it's all this fucking, all the mud comes up. You can't, darker than dark, bro. And so me and my buddy, and the thing to do there, because it messes up your compass, right? And I got all my dive, but it's basically based off my dive watts, how long each one of my lengths were, based on compensating for whatever the current was at that day. And so the thing to do is suck mud and don't move, because your compass is getting messed up with the ship, right? So I'm down there darker than dark, and we dive at nighttime anyhow, right? And so literally my buddy's on top of me holding me, and we're at the bottom of the San Diego Bay holding me, and we're like this, and it's so dark and we can hear this thing. It's like a city on top of you, and shaking so hard, bro, so hard, because it's like, oh my God, bro, because you're not moving and it's cold and you got to sit there for a bit. But a lot of those type of experience, because things happen, right? And I remember sometimes I'd do a dive, and for whatever reason my mask was leaking a little bit, and I try to purge it, leaks, but sooner or later it's I got a dive to do here, bro.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I'm diving, and I don't care about the water now, and there's salt water
It's halfway up.
burning up my eyes, halfway up my mask. I got no choice. I got a limpet mine on my back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being graded. I got it.
Did they give you the worst equipment that was available? Did you even have decent equipment, or was it falling apart?
No, the truth is,
They left that for the Marine
Because
Corps.
if you never dove before, it's a little nerve wracking when you have leaky masks.
oh man, you learn a lot about yourself sometimes doing that stuff, about problem solving too, and about staying cool, and just trying to figure things out. But yeah, hey, there's advantages to being a SEAL, and one of them is the gear is pretty high speed, and actually it gets crazy. When towards the end for me, my last two platoons, these private businesses that want to market, that SEAL gear or this or that, so they'd basically let us try stuff out. So it was kind of ridiculous.
Did you ever get to do any diving operations when you were a SEAL? Did you do a lot of that stuff? I mean, with the GWAT, it was all,
No. No.
You guys were, it was a whole different world.
It's funny what he says about going under the water and under the boats, because when I was I think it was in Japan at the time, we were heading towards either Philippines or East Timor or something like that, and the Navy SEALs were on our ship with Force Recon. I was actually in the berthing area I was on mess duty at the time, right? So I'm on mess duty. I have Force Recon.
Were you in trouble? Or
and the Navy SEALs. I got in trouble all the time. Yeah. You'll see comments from all my Marine buddies. They're like, yes. I had 3 NJPs when I was in.
Woo!
Yeah. So.
I should have had 10. But
Well,
they squashed everything, right?
I was a lot like, what you said, right? I was hard-headed punk from New Jersey, you know what I mean? My
That's why I'm glad I grew up in Brooklyn.
My mentality
you were
was
straight lace.
Yeah, my mentality was, you can't break me, I'll break you. You know?
Yeah.
And my other mentality was to the other people that were actually in charge. I was like, well, if you can't beat me up, then you can't tell me what to do. So, but anyway, yeah. So I was on mess duty at the time, and so funny. But it's not like peeling potatoes, if that's what you're getting at.
I heard they actually have a machine now for that. One of the
I don't know. I'd never
Yeah.
had to peel potatoes. I don't know. But anyway, so like I would be up on the ship, and you would hear, the Navy SEALs are underneath the water, doing
yeah,
patrol, and I'm like, are they crazy? I mean, it's like it was pitch dark. I mean, super dark. You couldn't see anything down there. I was like, that's got to be scary.
Did you ever go diving?
No.
At night?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's
No.
a different world. I mean, I only know it from wreck diving, not
Yeah.
It is.
doing commando ninja stuff.
No. I mean, I go in my in-ground pool at night with the lights off.
Yeah.
That's as close as I get.
You know what? I was with the Marines for a little bit right before shock and all. We were doing some VBSS stuff, visit board search and seas out there in the Med, working right off the LaSalle, USS LaSalle. We had a bunch of Marines on there too. Saw those guys a lot lifting weights. That was pretty much it there. But I tell you, one of the things about being in the Navy, such respect for Mother Nature. Like I remember being out there in the Med, and there was this big ass storm, bro, huge, and I think we were like like right around Cyprus somewhere, right? This storm rolls in, and I'm scared off my ass.
How big is the LaSalle? How big of a ship is that?
It was actually it was like
Is it a landing station?
an LSU,
Okay.
but that's not quite. I forget. It was
LSD.
LSD.
Yeah.
But what they did, maybe you know more about this,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know too much about Navy ships, believe it or not.
It's so funny. So I was a Marine, but I was on 12 ships.
Yeah.
So
This one, the one that they can basically open up the back.
yeah,
and
the
ships
well
can
deck.
come in.
Yeah, they open up. Yeah,
So what they did
that's
for
an LSD.
it was an
I believe.
LSD then,
Yeah.
and what they did is they actually welded it shut,
Huh.
and they actually made it like I'm not even kidding, like a command center. And it was kind of cool because when they hit shock and awe, for a couple things. One, I was a JTAC at the time. We could talk a little bit about. I was actually like a warm-up pitcher because they sent me with a couple other JTACs to a bombing range in Albania, and I was there for like 2 weeks and basically just doing dry runs.
What's
for
a JTAC? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Joint Terminal Air Control?
So you're calling in.
Right, right. But
air
this was just warm-up stuff at this bombing.
Is that like
range.
9 line stuff like that?
9 line is a 9 lines. You kind yes, in this
Yeah.
case, or JTAR, Joint Terminal Air Request. Basically, calling in airstrikes.
Mm-hmm.
But this was just dirt diving stuff for all the Navy air sets that were getting ready to go in hot, in shock and all. And so I did that for 2 weeks, like at some tent with a couple other JTACs and some bombing range in Albania and some island off there. And it was kind of cool when shock and all hit off because this was the LaSalle. Your readers can Google it up or whatever. It was a little command center, and we're in some type of Navy fighting detachment, and a couple other ships there. And so I was a team guy. I was a young team guy. Not too many people are going to say anything to me if I go someplace on a ship. So it was kind of cool because I'd go on a deck, and the ships, and it was at nighttime, and they're launching the Tomahawks
Yeah.
into Iraq.
That
And it was
wild.
And when if the ship's parallel with us, the one that's shooting the Tomahawk, it hit the Tomahawk, and all of a sudden we'd be a little in front of it.
Yeah.
And they were rocking.
But was it pitch black when because I've only seen it on videos, but when they were doing that, wasn't it pitch black? Like if you were on the deck, you couldn't.
The only thing you see is really the tracer rounds.
Like they don't have lights
the
on
only
the,
thing I
on,
saw.
the, on the at night, right?
Well, you're right. So when ships are at war, right, there's no lights, and then the interior lights are like, this isn't top TS stuff.
Yeah.
They're red. So like if you open it up, it's not going to kind of broadcast too much. But the moonlight, it was dark, but you could see the ship next to you. I mean, they were riding kind of
Yeah.
tight formation.
Yeah.
And so it was a kind of, and the other thing was because they had the command center down there, I'd see the Tomahawks, and I'd come down there, and they have like a bunch of TVs up there, and
Yeah.
you could see, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, it
That's
was,
cool. The were you ever up there when they were shooting like the Sea Whiz?
no,
It's so loud. It's crazy.
What's that?
We used to go out there all the time. I don't know
I
what
know
the
so little
technology
about
is.
this stuff.
I don't know what the technology is, but I was told that they shoot like batteries or something like that. Like I forget what it was called, but it was it's basically a big gun on top of a ship, right? They call it Sea Whiz. I don't know exactly.
How loud are these things?
So loud. That was the point that I was making. It's to a point where you're up on the deck listening to it, and it's so loud.
You have
It's
hearing
like,
protection on when you're on deck? Or
you
no?
have to. You have to.
So funny thing. So I'm
Sea Whiz anyway. I don't know about Tomahawks. Probably.
so here's the truth for me. I'm up there. I had zero
Yeah.
hear, and to me it wasn't.
I never did, by the way.
The sound wasn't probably one of the reasons why my ears sucked. But I don't recall a substantial sound on that. Now the Sea Whiz, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I believe that's high mathematical type of interception stuff where they shoot it for like incoming missiles and stuff. It's an air defense system,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yep. Yeah. and
Oh,
it's
so
like-
that's shooting missiles that are trying to attack. the
It,
ship.
it looks like almost like clusters, like they're shooting like clusters, and it makes this like I can't even. Did you ever see like the old or not the old like? Did you ever see like what's that movie with? It's with aliens, right? And they're marching out there on the big. It must be like Transformers or something like that. But they make like this big long sound like.
Kind of reminds me like an A-10.
Oh my god, it's so loud.
That's what it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of traces.
Just glad. Not imagine being on the receiving end of that.
Oh, it's crazy.
How is anybody still alive on the other ends? You see some of the stuff that goes on, and the amount of ordnance and commandos, and
Yeah. I always find it interesting. Like I was in an artillery unit on my first. So I was with a battery that we had everything. Fire directions, crew, liaison. The operation side of it, the actual guns, right? And I was a driver, so I would drive supply truck, ammunition, stuff like that. And it was funny, like I got a chance to be with a little bit of everybody, so I would go and see, fire directions crew. Liaison was usually up on a mountain somewhere, yep, thumbs up, yep, we hit it, But it was cool to see kind of all like the different things, but they're the ones that actually see it, right? So you see a gun shoot, right? So artillery like shoots, but there's so much like orchestration involved. There's like you have the fire directions crew saying, giving the grid coordinates, and they're getting the grid coordinates from liaison. So liaison's calling down, grid 54728 or 57. It's like, and then you hear like the guns say range deflection 5, and they'll repeat it.
So there's all kinds of people.
Oh yeah.
So
and
when
then,
you're a JTAC, you're on the ground and you're calling in on people. Is that?
That's what
Yeah.
what a JTAG does. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That,
When you were describing the whole crew teams and the way artillery is run, it kind of reminded me of a scene like the first Star Wars, like when the Death Star shoots the planet, like how it gears up and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's people don't really think about that, right? They think of like, oh man, the guy like shot or whatever, but there's a lot of work that actually goes and that's involved.
well, I
in
think each one of those tomahawks cost $1 million. There better be some work going in. There better be some smart people.
it. Well, how about who is it?
I
Chris?
think Tomahawks are GPS too guided. I'm not
Are
sure.
they?
I think they are. They are aided. Yeah. The did you ever hear Chris Rock talk about like he's talking about bullets make bullets really expensive.
Make bullets really expensive so nobody shoots each
Yeah,
other.
he gets shot 3 or 4 times. He's like, man, he must have did something wrong. They just pumped $3 million into him.
Going back a little bit, like how did you before you went into the military? What was it like growing up in the river towns in New Jersey? As I live now, I heard somebody describe it as that, and I laughed because I live in a river area. They made it sound like it was a rough going back then.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Burlington County. A lot of graduated from Burlington City, which is the Abbott School District.
That's South Jersey.
Yeah.
So
Willingboro, Browns Mills, which is a very small town called Dorchester. A lot of very lower income blue collar type of towns. Hey, I think across this country there's a million blue collar working class towns, and I think a lot of kids out there, for whatever reason, one way or another. Sometimes you get some hard cards you got to deal with, and sometimes you just got to figure a way to make it work, right? And sometimes you're young and you make it hard on yourself. I think all those type of cards were laying out for me. I was born with a cleft palate, and had a stepdad that wasn't too cool, and this and that, and playing musical houses. I'm a good-looking guy, so whatever new town I came in, girls might be a little interested. Some other guys might not be so happy.
I had the same problem growing up.
And no, it repeats. It's not new.
I thought this podcast was going to get interesting. I thought he said that guys were interested in him.
Well, that's happened later on in life. I don't know what signals I'm putting out there, but I'm like, hey.
Whatever you're putting out, they're picking up.
Vince is blushing.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going to happen here.
But hey, you know how it is. For me, what happened was I was really involved in sports. Like I grew up wrestling. My grandfather was a really good wrestler. My dad wrestled. So I wrestled. I played football. And those are pretty aggressive sports,
Did they all grow up in the same town?
No.
No.
My grandfather is somewhere in PA. My dad was Willingboro, South Jersey. And I think what happened with as I developed, you win a fight, you may win maybe 2 fights, and all of a sudden you think that's the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you find yourself in the detention center, and that is the answer in that type of environment, 100%. Like guys who, especially if you're white, if you're going to the detention center, it's a gladiator school. Get ready to fucking bang, because that's the right way. If not, your food's getting taken, and other things are getting taken. Like, you're going to fight. That's just it. It's just it. And so I think, like, from my experience.
So you wound up in juvenile detention for a time?
Off and on. If you add it all up, almost off and on, like sometimes like almost 2 years maybe off and on.
Wow.
And I was a pretty good athlete, which kind of messed things up for me. And I think, that's why the Navy saved my life, because, and some of those experiences that I had in there, the mentality kind of got me ready for buds. Because when other guys who are athletic and very patriotic guys kind of get pressed, part of me is like, I'm not fighting 5 guys at once here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And like, it's different. Like,
looking back in that system, you see kids going through that.
Right.
I'm sure there was a ton of kids that deserved to be there, but was it like the system itself? It doesn't seem to me that it would be. They call it corrective, but how many kids in there were you like, wow, this kid's a victim here?
Well, there were some victims in there, 100%. We talked about earlier, like a similar type of pattern you had growing up, and a lot of guys, right? I saw a similar type of pattern in actually guys who come from broken families, guys who don't have, come from poor families, don't have any type of support system. You get caught up in. If you really think about it, you think about a lot of the rap gangster culture, right? And how many of those young kids, like those misplaced values they aspired to, and it's such a trap.
And are they in shock when they get to that place? And it's a gladiator place? I mean, it's got to be horrifying.
Nah, I think for me, I remember the first time that I went to detention center was actually, it was kind of I had a younger brother who played t-ball, whatever, and I actually was at the mall. I got him a t-ball bat. Then I had another brother who was a year younger. And a bunch of guys got around him, and they said they were going to do something to him, and I just happened to have this bat. And I said, that's not happening. But the mistake I made is I hung around there,
And then the cop showed up.
Well, no. Then what they had is they souped up this idiot, and by the security guards, he comes running at me. Of course, I got the bat in hand, and he's like, put the bat down now. And he runs at me like the knucklehead he's got souped up to be. He ate, a 40-piece to the face. I dropped the bat. But all of a sudden, I didn't know anything about the law. I thought I was defending myself. And the cop said, well, did you say, what happened with the bat? I said, well, they were going to jump my brother. So I said that wasn't happening. So boop, boop. Next thing I know, I'm in a jumper suit in detention center.
Which is, when you look back on it, I'm growing up in Brooklyn. I had an incident as a kid. I have a dent in my head from it. I got mugged as a kid, right? Yeah. Bunch of kids, we got a bike stolen, right? Kid smashed my head into a signpost, right? The difference back then was the whole neighborhood went out and got basically were beating the crap out of people. Got every single. There must have been 8 of us that got our bike stolen. I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't. I didn't realize till later on that's what the dent in my head was from. They come down. They're chasing these kids. The cops. They were going down a one-way street the wrong way. Cops. They come nose to nose with an NYPD car. They go, "What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing?" They tell them what happens. You know what the cop said? "Happy hunting." But there are some kids that, sometimes you need to let them, a kid. How old were you when this happened?
16.
16. Yeah, I mean.
And you were protecting your.
And you're protecting your little brother.
5-year-old?
Yeah, he was about
T-ball?
5. He was,
Yeah.
but that wasn't my little brother that was going to get jumped. I know it's like one of those I just happened to get the thing for him, and then the stuff with my other brother happened. And I just happened. It was like the worst possible circumstances. It would have been better if I didn't.
You should have ran.
I don't think running is the right answer at the time because I had to separate the mob because he smoked. I didn't smoke at the time. But I think one of the things that happens with guys is necessarily the guys individually, not too bad, right? The decision making's not too bad, but you get together and all of a sudden you start doing, stupid things like what you just talked about. Yo, I'm at a party, my buddy got jumped, and the guys who jumped my buddy are now at my party. Oh, well, guess what time it is?
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff. And you're living, and then all of a sudden, like the things that you're out there trying to do, you're making decisions that are putting everybody's type of future in question marks because people can get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I always say 2 things from what you said, actually. But the big thing with me always is when I'm talking to either my nephews or even my kids, it's like, don't do something that you can't come back from, right? And even one of my nephews, right? He went and he wanted to go into the Marine Corps, got a tattoo, just like you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like pain is weakness, leaving the body.
Yeah.
And I was like, oof.
Gonna draw attention, bro.
That's rough. Yeah, that's probably not.
That
a good
must have
idea.
went over good with the drill.
He didn't end up going in, but I mean, I told him. I said at that point he was 16 or 15 or 16 at the time. But it's things like that. It's like you just got to make sure that you're not. You can have fun, right? You can go out, you can party. I drank at a young age. 15, 16 years old. We were running around and. I grew up in the backwoods in Jackson, right? We used to have all these
like these
parties.
incidents could have kept you out of the military if somebody looked at it the wrong way.
Well, I got a waiver, and I had a recruiter that really looked out for me.
I had a waiver too.
Yeah, saved my life, got me out
I
of.
think me and Vince are the only good kids here.
My story is actually really in line, kind of with yours. I mean, it's I was football, wrestling. Got in trouble a lot when I was a kid.
So is the message here, don't do sports?
No,
I mean,
No,
I'm kidding.
The message actually is, right, and from my side of it at least, that the military changed me astronomically.
It shaped you.
It gave me something that I never knew existed. And it brings me back to did you ever watch The Matrix where
Yes.
he takes the spoon and he says there is no spoon, right? That part right there really is everything to me because I use that in my everyday life. Like I can literally, if someone is working me up, right, or so they're trying at least, right. Yeah. I have this ability just to turn it off. I can reprogram my brain on the fly, and I say to myself, it's not a problem unless it's a problem.
Is that also because you guys went through a situation where you have people sitting there screaming in your face?
You just
and you're able to be so now if you get into a street altercation, and the guy. You look at the guy like he's a buffoon.
No,
you're not
for me,
Navy SEAL instructor or a Marine drill sergeant yelling at me.
I think it's everything. Like I used to joke around and say, if everybody wore, what they've been through in life, like billboards on themselves, nobody would fuck with you. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like, if someone, I think that's funny when people a lot of people have this unwarranted self-worth. You know what I mean? Especially when they're growing up, and you'll see it from kids that grew up with money or something. and they don't have those scars on them, right? Where they're the scars of actually going through different things and actually understanding the
Yeah, the
consequences.
scars are inside. You don't
Yeah.
see them on the outside.
Yeah, so for me, I know what happens, right? I know the end of the game. I already fast forward to the end. I know exactly what happens, right? So for me, it's never. I always say it's not a problem unless it's a problem. Meaning, unless it's terminally ill cancer or something like that, right? You can come back from it, right?
You're gonna get around it.
And that's what I preach to kids too. That, the kids out there that are they have all these problems.
Were you a good student at all?
No, I was a total mess, bro. It wasn't until I was in the Navy and like in boot camp, because I was a pretty good athlete, and I don't know why, but I never had an issue with the girls. So
It's the hair. It's the Navy SEAL hair.
one of the things that what's the right word to put it? You could get by in high school and kind of be a soup sandwich. As far as that, you can't do that in the military, and definitely not in a combat unit.
Yeah.
You just can't. Like, you can't in boot camp. Like, all of a sudden, like, and the other beautiful thing is they start giving you responsibility. Like, you start having responsibility, and so I actually thought I was a dumbass, right? And the thing was, when I went to Buds, the instructors absolutely thought I was a dumbass. But when you go through that, and they dropped me 2 weeks from graduation, and what happens is you go through that the first time. I know those guys. Now all of a sudden those guys are SEALs. And for me that was my only way out.
This is 2 weeks graduate before Buds graduated. They dropped you.
Yeah, the last possible test, weapons practical. And so because they thought I was a dumbass, and I was a little, in some ways, I was a little too cocky. But I think that's really what it's about, right? It's about this finesse, and the finesse kind of comes to a lot, because one of the things you learn. So I knew I could 100%. I knew I could be a SEAL, and it killed me that now all.
So you had to go through Buds again?
Yeah. So one of the things that
I'm already ready. I'm ready to ring the bell already.
so I'll tell you, there's a couple things about sometimes you have to roger up and fight, and that, like, a lot of these veterans now, right? Like, what happens is, for whatever reason, they come back and they put on their Mickey Mouse gloves when they're getting screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
And my message is, no way, bro.
Yeah.
You got to fight, 100%.
You mean like mental illness, PTSD, everything? You see people.
Well, a lot of that is because, one, you're not. Where's the guys out there that are showing everybody out there kicking ass and huge victories? That's what I love about the New York City SEAL Swim. We're out there with our shirts off, waving our American flags high,
Absolutely.
honoring our nation's freedoms, civil liberties, honoring all the men and women who came to our country for a better life, our diversity, honoring our police officers, our firefighters, honoring all those who put on line for our country. That's what I like, having a victory. Now, a lot of this stuff, you look at, like, what they did to our brothers from Vietnam, right? Like, we honored a Vietnam veterans at the swim this year. You look at what they did to our police officers, the defund movement, where they're trying to, like, this anti-social movement against men and women who protect and serve our country, right? So we're out there rebutting all that, and so there's different ways of persuasion. There's ways of persuasion where I'm in your face, and with direct confrontation, which I think is normally not the right way. The type of persuasion I'm really about is, look, just like how combat units, you go out there and you do these high risk, but very high rewarding type of ops. And guess what? You're going to get more of them. And you keep doing that, your victory is sending a message. And that's the way, like, I try to gear up. Now, I'm a leader. Like, I'm the president of the Veterans Alumni at Rutgers University. I'm a leader in the SEAL community. And that's what I gear up. Like, I'm not fucking around. Like, it's just as serious as I was when I was a team guy, or just as serious when I was gearing up to go through Buds. I'm not like, and my message to these guys out there, look, absolutely there's bias towards police officers and veterans, 100%. Let me tell you, I'm in the legal community, and the pomposity of these cocksuckers, bro. Cocksuckers, man. The pomposity. they can't see sacrifice and service and love from our nation from 2 feet from their front face, man.
Is it because they had it too easy?
You know,
They've been protected the whole time?
well, guess what? Unfortunately, with the policies, the foreign policies, domestic policies, you can tell by statistics that things are becoming a little more unsafe, right? And so my advocacy, and one of the other ways I try to advocate is I say, hey, enough with the puppy that doesn't stick up for himself becomes the runt,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what's happened to police officers and firefighters for too long. Now, so we gotta stick up for ourselves, right? But we gotta realize what the other side's trying to do, right? And what their likely counteractions are going to be. And so one of the things you could learn from Trump is say, absolutely, I got to stick up for myself, but I can't get the other side leverage by saying shit that's going to put me in a bad position. Now, I'm open about my past because you know what? My past, fighting in the detention center and getting in some street fights with other kids just like me, poor, rough and tumble kids, and basically you know what we did? We were relieving pressure on each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a lot of it, and looking for a venture, and
I call it open up the Coke bottle a little bit.
that's it, man.
Just letting the
Pressure
thing out.
release.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's the same thing with jiu-jitsu,
Mhm.
guys who roll right now. This is the same form, but it's a more gentler form, right? It's a kind of a legal form, and it's good.
I don't like to tout it, but I am a 2-stripe white belt. So I don't want you to feel intimidated or
And
anything.
it shows.
It shows.
You touched on something that I think is really important, and I think the public really needs to know.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something.
Right.
When you did a op, right? You did an operation somewhere.
Yeah.
How long did you trade for that operation?
All right, great question. So I almost feel like I'm a lawyer now. It depends. Because
Yeah.
the truth is, it depends. So the way a team workout is, like a workout, like you train up, right? And so when we started doing a lot of desert warfare and mountaineering warfare and then like PSD stuff, like they didn't tell us we're going to Iraq or, I didn't go to Afghanistan, my Iraq vet. But I figured I'm doing a lot of desert warfare training here. I'm doing a lot of stuff in the mountains. We're either going to Iraq or Afghanistan. They didn't tell us, but I think everyone kind of figured it out. Like when you're spending months,
They
and
kept
months,
it that secret from you guys.
And well, think about it. You're mid-20s, 20-year-old guys. Everybody's got girlfriends or wives, younger guys. Guys are gonna yap it up.
ISIS is on Facebook too.
Yeah. So one of the things, you kind of figure out what's what. So as far as the generalized type of training, yes. But I think some of the stuff that happens overseas is you get certain quals.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a JTAC, I was a comm guy, I was a breacher. So all of a sudden, like I find myself on sniper ops with the Army. Not that I'm a sniper, but because I was a JTAC. And then like all of a sudden, we used DNVT type of comms, where basically like these SAT comms, and there was a different type of encryption, Army and Marine Corps guys, you guys like frequency hopping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, I'm in Baghdad, I'm getting ready to do a sniper op, and they tell me, and basically they're prostituting me out because I got a qual that those guys need on their op, and I'm spending all day with their, some comm guy in the Army trying to learn his radio.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that type of stuff, like, guess what? You're going on this op and gear up the best you can.
And you're figuring it out as you go.
Yeah, but you know what happens in that type of situation is you're in it together, And so all of a sudden, this guy I just met, like now we're best friends and we're figuring it out.
And when you were going back to the first responder issue, like you're talking about cops, firemen, all the negativity that's going on, especially with the defund the police movement and everything, which seems to have slackened off a little bit with the crime. People are starting to wake up to a little bit. When you look at the training that you got as a SEAL, transfer that to, let's say, the NYPD, or let's say any major department across the country, and you look at incidents that have gotten popular, right?
Yeah.
And you think about it, and they're saying defund them. But how, from your perspective,
Yeah, that's the point I was making.
Yeah,
So,
like
that's why I was asking him. So you get to that
I
point,
think
right?
we were like synced in our minds.
No, I was actually asking it, and then you
Oh.
jumped in to
Oh,
actually
sorry.
jump in on it.
Sorry.
So no, I'm joking. But the point is, a lot of people don't realize that cops, a lot of this stuff is happening on the fly, right? And it's all different situations all the time that are constantly happening.
What are they
But
for?
but what happens is someone like us, right? We're training for 5,
For
6,
months.
7 months for this one operation, right? Where these cops are just on the fly, have to ad lib and improv to all these different things that are happening to them, right? And for me, it's like you have to fund them more, right? You have to make sure that they're getting more training than what they're getting. A lot of police officers that I talk to, and it's nothing against them, it's just they don't get the training. Plus, a lot of them haven't, fired weapons or anything since they've, first started, out of their initial.
Well, I have family
training,
that
right?
are cops, and I mean,
Yeah.
they go for, I think it's every 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
They have to qualify. So, I mean, like, as a SEAL, as a Marine,
Mm-hmm.
you guys get a lot of credit for being able to go in and hit the right people,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the GWAT. I mean, you had a lot of really bad people.
But when
right?
when
But
when
it's also about who you're not kidding.
he's on a whole different level, but on my side of it, we used to do Marine Expeditionary units. What we would do is we would train 6-7 months for one mission, and we would actually go through every single scenario that you could possibly go through, right?
Like planning for
Yeah.
contingencies.
And just like Tyson says, right? Once you get punched in the face, all things go to hell, right? And that's exactly what happens. But you train for all these different scenarios. These cops aren't training for a lot of these scenarios, and it's
Yeah, like you could walk into a room with a SEAL team, and it's more important who you didn't shoot. And you, like, these guys aren't getting that training. And then they're getting lambasted all over the, What do you think could change? I mean, it's just
Well, there's a couple things, right? So one is, look, if I'm swimming upstream, it's really hard for me to swim upstream for a certain period of time, right? So what happened, in my opinion, with law enforcement? Now, this is just my opinion. My opinion it was that there's a weak presidential candidate, and they needed to rally a certain base. And so they were on a lookout for issues that could rally the base. And one of those is racial issues and hostility in law enforcement. And so what they do is they find an incident like that, and they put a huge spotlight.
They
And what
exacerbate
they
it.
do is they frame it in a way where the word is a systemic problem.
right.
Now, the issue is there law enforcement? You think about law enforcement. Every city, every municipality, every township in our country has a law enforcement, right? And the issues you guys talked about is it's so diverse, from a regular traffic stop to as high stakes as it can get. So how can you properly train for all that? And you got limited budgets.
And you have really, and they're saying cut the budget even more.
And then you have a media and a political part of a party that's trying to absolutely stoke up tensions because they need to rally a certain part of the base. Now, here you are, a law enforcement officer. You're proud of your uniform. You're proud of your uniform. You're proud of every day you put it on the line for our country. You're out there doing the best you can at a high-risk job every day, because the issue is, I can tell you from my experience in Iraq, I think the most draining part of it being in a combat zone is what's going to pop off. Because
The unknown.
because what happens is there's periods where it's not. Then all of a sudden, it is. And it's the same thing with law enforcement, I think to a different extent, for different police officers in different places. Police officers in Paterson, New Jersey, the stress that they're dealing with is probably a lot higher intensity and tempo than other officers in different municipalities. So what do these guys got to do? And so this would be my advice to them. And it's kind of similar to the advice they would give us. So before we would do an op, the JAG would come in and give us the ROEs, right? And then the JAG would leave. Normally it was some young officer, right? JAG would leave, and then they would tell us what's what. And normally this is how it would go. It says, do what you have to do to look out for your brothers.
To come back.
Come home. That's the number one rule is come home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that if you look at the American military, Joe, and, we were talking earlier, we're talking about how we're giving candy to kids and things like that. Look, some of the times I wasn't in an American uniform, right? I'm as American as you can get. And there were some stories where that kind of drew attention to me that got really intense. But I think most Americans go out of the way, and I'm talking in real combat zones, go out of the way to do what they can to, strictly keep it to where it belongs. And I think most police officers do too. Now, I think one of the things that happens, look, it can't happen. You get hundreds of guys in the outfit years and years. Every once in a while, somebody slips through the cracks who's got an issue. And I think one of the things that happens is, and this happens all the time, not all the time, but in any type of industry, that when you got guys who are off the mark, a good unit says, hey, we got to shit can this guy.
Yeah, slow. Yeah.
And I
take care of it from within.
Yeah, and I think that happens, but I think it's we have to realize what's going on out there. The truth is, what's going on out there is they turned good men and women in the military in Vietnam, right? Painted them as war criminals, right? And the way they treated those guys who loved their country was horrible. Horrible.
Yeah.
Then they tried to do the same thing to good men and women in law enforcement. 100% that's what they did. And they did it for political purposes to rally up the base, right? Think about how many cities had riots. How many cities across this country were unsafe? New York City, right? And you think about, I had a buddy of mine, right? I'm not going to drop any of his names. But he's like, shit's happening in New York. And he's like, hey, let's go up. Because I had actually another buddy in San Diego and some businesses. He was a prior team guy. Some businesses paid him to basically be out front with a flak jacket. He had a couple other guys with him. And it was
protect the businesses.
Yeah, nothing. It wasn't to the extent that things happen in Philly and like New York City. So my buddy reaches out to me and says, hey, I want to go to New York City, this and that. And I said, that's the wrong move, bro. I said, hey, if you got family members who are jammed up, we'll kid up and we'll get them. And we'll get them out of there 100%. But I'm not just going there. I was like, to me, what happens is if we go there, we get checked.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happens if you get checked and you don't ride you up? All of a sudden, they're dragging you down the street.
Yeah.
Things like that. Now, if you get checked and you ride you up, because I'm a SEAL, I ain't getting drugged down the street.
Mm-hmm.
You hear me? Then all of a sudden, my life is over.
Yeah, 100%.
Because all of a sudden, Daniel, what's his name? The guy from the city, the subway.
Kyle
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse.
But same type of.
Now I got to say something before this.
You're talking about the Marine in the subway?
Daniel Pearl.
Yeah.
Oh, Daniel Pearl.
Yeah.
But you're not a right wing nut. Like how we get sometimes. Like you're like.
You ran for assembly as a
Democrat.
I was a Democrat and township council.
So I just got to bring that up because a lot of people will see this, and Vince will put shorts on, and he'll always show me drinking for some reason. But people say, "Oh, these are three right wingers talking," and that's not a fact.
Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to minimize the message.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they'll minimize you because if they can label us as a certain label, then the tactical reasoning for that is, well, they won't hear out our message, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what that is they make there's two things happening now. I call it a bias tribunal or a kowtow tribunal. So a bias tribunal is basically it's that they stereotype, they minimize you to such an extent, dehumanize you. So now your value and input isn't taken into consideration to the equation.
Yeah, it negates everything you say.
Negates everything. No open market of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, cancel culture. Where do you see that? Social media. Where do you see that every academic campus in our country? Where do you see that all our law schools? Where do you see that in our professional fields, in our banking systems, across the board, in our federal bureaucracies? And so to me, it's important. That's why freedom of speech is so important. Because when the way capitalism is supposed to work, the way the open market of ideas is supposed to work is, look, I give my perspective, and it's almost like a lawyer's case. I'll give you my evidence. You weigh it out against the counter perspective, and normally the best product, the most suggestive type of opinion that's reinforced with facts, an educated populace should weigh it out, and that's why good products and good ideas should rise to the surface. But that's why freedom of speech is so important. That's why the Commerce Clause and capitalism is so important. And that's what's happening is that's their long-term objective here.
We're not seeing objectiveness and freedom. Freedom of speech is constantly getting squashed.
That's why 100%, especially if you look like guys who spoke up against the COVID mandates, they would get shut down 100%. I have over 24,000, actually I have over 27,000 followers in LinkedIn, and I'm shadow banned. And what they do is at first they shadow ban me completely. And then now they're a little smarter about it. I get like 24 likes. I used to get hundreds. And so what they did is they minimized my...
It doesn't show up on someone's feed when you post.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on it. So what these open forums are really important, extremely important, because this is really what we're doing. We're sharing our ideas and perspectives. Now, I think his name was Daniel Pearl, the Marine, who basically, the guy was, threatening everybody on that subway. And how many of us have experienced that? I know I have many
Millions
times,
of
right?
times.
And so he stood up, and him and a couple of other individuals, and they restrained him. Unfortunately, the guy choked out. Now, what happens? Do you think he's going to get a fair trial in New York City?
No.
So one of the things is we got, honestly, the justice system, when you think about it, if you can't have fair and unbiased legal tribunals, I mean, our country's in trouble.
Yeah.
Like because the law is so important, because that's what the law is. The law is supposed to be standardized, and it doesn't.
It's supposed to be blind.
Supposed to be blind, right? Now you can look what happened, and so what happens when they press on the police and try to...
Well, I gotta say something. I mean, as a 2-stripe white belt in jiu-jitsu, right? I don't think he did the choke right, because I've been choked out so many times as a white belt. It's ridiculous. And that was the only downside. That's the only thing, because the guy stood up for people who were being menaced. And they're saying, you should just shut up. Let him kill somebody, and then deal with the conditions.
It's funny that you said that before, because I've been on, the subway millions of times where you can tell somebody that's mentally ill comes in. They'll start talking to people in a crazy way, or they'll start messing with girls and sitting by them, or getting really close to people. I see it all the time.
My niece is just graduated accounting. She became an accountant. She works for a big firm in the city. She's on the subway, and it's something that my whole family did growing up. Her mom, my sister, commuted. Living in Brooklyn, we were always on the subway. You always had your share of crazies, right? My niece is on the train. Some psycho comes up to her. She's dressed to go to the city. Gerbs on her. You know what a gerb is? I mean, just spits on her.
Ugh.
I mean, this guy, luckily he didn't murder her. That's all he did.
Yeah.
But that's what you're supposed to deal with. And how do you, people are sitting by videotaping this guy. And, this guy stood up for these people.
Yep.
This guy died probably really from resisting, I assume. An article came out that surfaced from I think it was the New York Post, from 10 years ago, warning about this guy. Now, all media, to your point about freedom of speech and everything, the way media slants things, 10 years ago, there was an article in the New York Post about this guy and how he was menacing people. 10 years ago.
Well, what I thought was interesting about that, and a lot of people didn't put kind of that together, was he was a U.S. Marine, right? Choked somebody out. Coincidentally, 2 weeks later, there's another piece that comes out where a whole bunch of teenagers beat up a U.S. Marine close to a base. Did you hear about that?
Yeah,
So
I heard about it.
and it was almost like the narrative was being painted that no, continue to be assholes, right? Marines aren't that tough. They're not all going to choke you out. See, teenagers.
How did 10 people beat up a Marine?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, well, I think he'll actually also rubber stamp this. You're a kid when you go into the Marines.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like you're 18 years
But
old.
Marines are
19 years
like
old.
8 feet tall and
No,
400 pounds.
A lot of them go in and they have that head, like, oh, I'm the toughest guy in the world, and they'll go in and start crap, and I'll tell you what. I was in so when I was in Missouri, it actually happened to me where we went to a concert in Crocker, right? I mean, Crocker's probably the most white trash place in the world.
Where's Crocker?
Right? It's in Missouri.
Just don't say Alabama. We had an issue with the last podcast.
It's crazy. It's insane. Like it's a whole bunch of country boys, and they have like shotguns. It's just crazy, right?
It sounds like a great place.
Oh, it's insane. Well, back then it was like people like us, we were considered Yankees. Like we go in there, So we went there and went to go see this concert, and they hear you're a Marine or something like that, and we're talking like a whole concert. I mean, the whole concert turned around and looked at us, right? Because it was like, oh, they came in here and talking to our girls or whatever they're doing.
Oh, because they're the townies and you're the guys from the base.
And the townies all of a sudden turned around and came at us. I mean, and there was about 500 of them. We got out of there before anything happened. You put a good head on, right? And you're like, I found out like one of the people that were there were leaving in a truck. We jumped in the back of their pickup and like skated off, But it's stuff like that. It's like you never know. You never know what's going to happen in a situation like that, and it's probably best to get away. But that kid decided to fight.
Yeah, that kid.
Both kids
in the subway. I mean, you're talking about people menacing innocent people. Men are supposed to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
In society, men are supposed to stand up for women who are getting menaced.
That's the way it should be. I always think about what our government's supposed to do, right? Our government is like this social contract theory, right? What the government's supposed to provide the individual the ability to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And in return for that, basically, we give some allegiance to the government, right? And that's really what this country was founded on. And it's founded on some other things, like another important part that we talked about, due process, right? That's basically the laws applied fairly to everyone. And that's one of our big question marks in some of these, what I would actually define as woke jurisdictions, right? Just the truth. I don't know in some places now if you can get a fair trial, and it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things, like, okay, we all have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? You tell a horrible story, just some poor lady, getting spit on. That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Or people in the subway getting menaced. And so what happens, right, is you get somebody who stands up with Kyle Rittenhouse. Everybody's things are getting burned.
A young kid who decided to just try to protect innocent
That's
people.
right. And so they tried to make an example of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, I think the American people, and not just American people, most people, and you look at a lot of these cities, right? A lot of these cities where there's a high crime rate, you know what they would love? They would love the majority of those people in those cities if it was safe. They would love it. And I don't care what race, what religion you are. I think most Americans, it almost reminds me of having a substitute. You got a substitute teacher comes in there and like the class goes crazy. But you guess what? The class, sometimes it gets so wild, but it's like, Jesus, I wish the regular teacher would come back, right? And I think that's what's happening now with our country. Things have gone so crazy. I think most people, and I think all Americans are like, you know what, this is like ridiculous. And you look and now they're like, it's gotten so bad where the mayor of New York City is begging for a wall.
The government, the White House just said they're going to build 20 miles of new wall. Meanwhile, when they first got in, they sold the wall for scrap that was stacked up that hadn't been installed yet.
Yeah.
Now they're going, well, we're being forced to put up more wall.
Well, there's kind of stakes to that, right? Because I've been to some places that are. Let me tell you, if I wasn't with a couple SEALs armed up and had air support, like I would never go.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that those people deal with, God bless them. God bless them because the life they're living. And so to be honest with you, I can never blame anybody coming from those places trying to get here.
Oh, not at all.
Better life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we only got so many resources.
Yeah.
How many of my brothers, my veterans, are homeless, looking for jobs, and and these guys are putting beautiful work for our country. And so, am I biased towards Americans? Yes.
Absolutely.
Am I absolutely biased towards veterans? You better believe.
You got to protect the homeland first.
Can I relate to other people coming from different places that are real shitholes trying to get here for a better life? Man, I can't blame
But
them.
when you see the kids, on the border as a dad.
Yeah.
I mean, I got 7 kids. I'm sitting there looking and going, I have an 8-year-old.
Yep.
But again, and you're going, but why? But most of the people coming over are men. And you're going, why are you trying to help your country? Do something. But
sooner or later, like, the adult has to come in the room. Like, this whole demonizing police, it's batshit crazy, bro. And the truth is, American people
need law and order.
American people want law and order.
Mm-hmm.
These cities, do you think people in Philadelphia, all these where they just start looting and stuff? Let me tell you, if you go in and you loot a shit out of a store in front of me, if I don't stand up and try to stop that madness, shame on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
And you go, what? Am I going to wind up in jail because I'm
Well,
trying to stop?
here's the
what's going
truth. Here's the truth. If you're in one of these jurisdictions that are woke, probably. But you want to know what? Speak up and do it, because our country needs it. My hat's like Daniel Pearl. Look, you're right, because it's a lot easier to choke somebody out on a carotid artery. It's faster as hell too.
on? I get it done to me all the time.
But
I've
you
never
want to
done
know?
it to anybody.
I'm not going to money more to quarterback things.
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
Things happen. Was his intention in the right place? 100%. The
choke didn't. That wasn't it. That wasn't.
Does
a choke.
anybody in their right mind really think he ever meant to for that guy to die? No. He was trying to restrain a risky order, a situation and reduce risk.
There was also people around him helping him too. It wasn't like he
he
just
wasn't
sitting
the
there
only
choking
guy.
him. The other
Yeah.
guys, there was actually people around him actually helping.
And it wasn't a racial issue either.
Well, there was actually black guys actually helping.
Yeah.
him,
Well,
do it.
Well, he's a white Marine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, racism is in all colors.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that it's not one way or another, no, it's there. Look, you look at when they arrest somebody now and they're black, some news medias, they blur out their face. If they're white, they don't. That happens. My belief is I believe in being a realist. I believe most Americans are most Americans are good people, and there's only a certain party out there that's stirring up racial stuff, right? And I think anybody that stirs up racial stuff, look, if there's a racial issue, absolutely bring it to light. But to try to exploit racism for political power, I think is a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's a well-practiced crime, and it's a disgrace. And I think most Americans are good Americans, and we don't care what race you are. We don't care. As long as you're a consenting adult, I could care less. But I think it's about time that this country's starting to realize, look, we need law and order. The time where you're just ransacking streets and the time where the subways are unsafe, it hurts business. Because you know what business
Hurts
likes?
everything.
Business likes, you go to any bank, it's quiet. Business likes things quiet. All of a sudden at my firm, they got a Newark police officer parked out front. I know why. You know why? Because guess what? Business needs security.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the American people want security. The American people want security. You know why Mayor Adams? And I like Mayor Adams. I think he's done some things right. I think he's in a tough spot because part of his party's so woke. but at least he was a police officer. At least he served.
He was on the streets at some point.
My thing is, I think he was elected for law and order.
Right.
I think that's what New York needs. And not just New York City, but a lot of these cities. But my thing is, look, doing what's right doesn't mean doing what's legal. And that's the truth. There's a line like, okay, I am in a woke city with a woke prosecutor. I'm a white Navy SEAL. I'm a renowned Navy SEAL. And I'm a lawyer. There's no doubt if I get in an altercation and things go south, they're running me through. 100%.
Absolutely.
But my thing is this. Guess what? I owe it to our nation to stand up. I owe it to, number one, my experiences, my training. If something happens, God made that happen in front of me. And not only that, look, here's the truth. Sometimes this is a long type of intellectual fight here with different ideas. My ideas are that this nation's a great nation. The values that we were founded on, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, equality, that are transcribed in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, are the right values, are the right ideas. Mm-hmm. And if you look at our nation's history, we've taken great strides to live up to those ideas. You look at the Civil War, that hundreds of thousands of Americans died to end slavery. You look at the Jim Crow, you look at the civil rights movements where you had, great leaders, Martin Luther King.
There's beauty in its simplicity.
Beauty.
If you follow the simplicity of it.
The women's suffrage movement, how they stood up so they could vote. We've evolved and changed and made great measures to live up to those great ideals. And now, look, in my opinion, we're taking a backwards turn here. When you limit free speech on college campuses, or academic institutions where you bring the brightest together from across the country, from across the planet, where they're supposed to exchange dialogue, and you muzzle that up, oh my God, what a great sin that is. What a great sin
That's supposed to be where people are supposed to express ideas.
That's right.
Not be told, shut up, don't talk about it.
Or basically canceled. If you do, your grades are hurt, you're excluded, you're isolated, you're shouted down. In some places, they'll even throw paint on you.
Well, it's like masculinity too. Like they're trying to beat down masculinity. They want people not to be as masculine as they are. I go into the gym, right, and it's super funny.
You work out.
Yeah, I go into the gym and it's funny. It's like you go in and there's where and I don't really knock that. I'm probably saying this the wrong way and how I'm portraying it, but there's a lot more girls than there were before. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up.
But that's a good thing too, because girls are toughening up.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think it's great. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. What I'm saying is masculinity. Now you look at some of the guys that are working out, the age for age, right? So let's say they're 18, 19 years old, girls to guys, right? They get in there and they're sitting there working out, and the boys are much weaker than the girls.
You think
right?
so?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And they have this, like, docileness, right? Like, they're afraid to be masculine. And I think, like myself, like Bill, sometimes.
Man.
Yeah. During the stripes, But, no, you get to a point where, this, I believe we need more masculine guys to step up and do this and say, get to a point where we interject and say, stop, right? Enough is enough, right? And a lot of people don't want to do that because they don't want to lose their jobs, right? They don't want to get arrested. They don't want to, they want to stay under the radar, right? And, I have a buddy of mine that actually says, this isn't my fight, right? Where
nobody thinks
this is our fight. Right?
This
is our fight.
We're all in this together.
100%.
And here's to those who have that type of thought process. Here's my kind of take on it. So when I was in Iraq, right, I did some raids, and all of a sudden I'm in the house, and the way they treated the women, I see them. It's like I felt like it was 120 degrees out, and they got the women all dressed up like ninjas, and it's so damn hot out there, And I thought to myself, at least back here, and sometimes people complain about American women, but I'm like, you know what? I love And what killed my marriage, guys, is when I went to law school. Oh my God, all these beautiful, intelligent women. This, and so when you think what a lot of, in my opinion, so much talent, so many intelligent women over there that like in Afghanistan, don't even have a right to go to school.
They're not even allowed to read.
If I got a woman like my right hand shooting with me, man, and she can shoot and she's quick on her feet, fuck, what the shit that we can get done.
Yeah.
And like when I'm working with female attorneys and they're so sharp, I think there's nothing
They're
sexy.
tigers. They don't take any crap.
Sexy as hell. I love it. And I love female athletes. Oh my God, I think that's so sexy. And veteran women, I'm telling you right now, if you're a veteran, I'm probably attracted to you.
Your girlfriend's gonna be very
Or like a
angry
police
if
officer.
she listens
It's the
to this.
truth. I can't lie. Or like a police officer or firefighter chick. Because I'm like, damn, that woman, she's got fucking courage. And when we talk about a good team, we need to have these patriotic women standing up with us. Because we got to take this country, we got to show a different message out there.
Yeah.
And so we need them to speak up because they're so smart and they can add so much to the table and so sexy. And it's nothing like, one of I think the best feelings of like sexual attraction I have for a woman is like when you accomplish something together, like you have a victory together. Victory sex is the best.
I told my wife, I go once in a while when I go to the gym.
Yeah.
I told my wife, I go, some of these girls are studs.
Yeah.
They're in there squatting, and the best part is, I'm going to the squat rack one day, and I had to take off weight from a girl was.
Yeah.
I told my wife, I go, I was so emasculated. This girl was lifting, I was like, oh no, I just need to warm up. I'll take that off. But meanwhile, the girl was lifting more than I was.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if the guys are lifting, being less, but at least the gyms are packed.
Yeah.
Because when you look at social media, stuff like that, I have a friend who's from China, and she told me, she goes, in China, they watch what goes on in America.
Mm-hmm.
And TikTok and all that is the polar opposite.
Oh, I could tell you I'm an internet, right? So what I do for a living, I can see transpire in kind of real life, right? So you look at like TikTok, for instance. TikTok is educational in China. It's not it's what
she
we
said
do.
It's totally
dances,
masculine
all
and
that
totally
stuff.
educational.
They're breaking down weapons. They do
All
math,
the feminine,
things
like the
that.
men being feminine here, is banned in
Yeah.
China.
Yep.
They were like, oh, it's totally opposite.
Yeah, and they block. I mean, you don't have the social media sites and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think we have to maneuver ourselves in key positions in the government, in life, in education, everything, to make a difference, right? And get back to the values that you said, right? Getting back to what this world was, or what our nation was founded on, right? The Constitution, right? And actually go and go back to the basics. You know what I mean? Go back and being masculine. Do the things that we were meant to do, and keep within that construct.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is actually, we're part of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movement. And what we're doing here right now is evidence of basically we're presenting our arguments, right? And to hope, and our tribunal, right, is the American populace. That's what we're, this is a movement. That's what this is. We got the far left out there, and we're out there saying, hey, you know what? This country's great.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Men and women who serve this country should be honored. And guess what? Here's the truth. We all need law and order. And guess what? We all need fair and balanced and non-biased, kowtowed legal tribunals. That's what.
And elections.
And fair. And you know what? Your great issue.
Yeah.
How come there haven't been any congressional investigations into the electoral process? Because I think reasonable Americans can have serious questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have questions about, guess what? You have questions about, is this judge biased? Is this judge woke? Right? Is this electoral process biased? Because if it is bias and the vote doesn't mean anything, and how rampant is the corruption? Because at a certain
How deep does it go? And you're not willing to prove that it's beyond the reasonable doubt.
if it looks like if it looks like some of your federal leaders and the highest levels of law enforcement are biased, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean for our nation? What's the long-term effects of that? If it looks like the Supreme Court's intensely leaking decisions to rally up the base right before a primary election, what does that mean? And what does that hold for the future? Like, these are serious questions.
There was no consequences on that.
This was the American Sidebar podcast. Have a great day.